We've all been disappointed by video games that fell short of expectations, and as one of gaming's most challenging years ever, obviously due to pandemic-related issues across the board, 2021 was no exception. Still, it's not like we didn't have tons of video games to talk about, and if there's one thing that goes hand in hand with hype and satisfaction, it's disappointment and regretting your purchase. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video games in 2021 everyone regretted buying. Number 8. Battlefield 2042. It sure has been a rough time for fans of military shooters, exemplified by the shambolic letdown that was Battlefield 2042. For starters, many were frustrated EA decided not to include a story-driven campaign, yet still charged full price for everything, focusing all of DICE's energy on a microtransaction-filled multiplayer instead. Still, even that fell far short of the expected Battlefield standard, with a release full of glitches, crashes, and major connectivity issues. Beyond that, fans complained en masse about the removal of classes, the mediocre array of weapons available from the start, and the underwhelming new mode, Hazard Zone. Really, it's only the strong graphics, solid gunplay, and entertainingly innovative Portal mode which saved Battlefield 2042 from being a total failure. With the game's player count already eclipsed by Farming Simulator 22 on PC, 2042's future is looking bleak. Number 7. Biomutant. There are few games that everyone wanted to succeed this year more than Biomutant, an open-world action RPG taking place in a post-apocalyptic setting where the player controls a super neat-looking badass animal warrior. With its attempt to deliver a AAA concept on a AA budget, and having spent almost 6 years in development, Biomutant was an easy game to root for, which made its massively disappointing release all the more crushing. Playing the game, it's agonizingly clear developers Experiment 101 bit off more than they could chew, and despite its colorful world and enjoyable combat, Biomutant is a generic action game that wears thin fast. The story is notably heavy-handed, while campaign missions and side quests consist of the same bog-standard RPG fare we've all played through dozens of times over the years. As the game everyone wanted to be and against the odds masterpiece, this sadly just didn't measure up. Number 6. Mario Golf Super Rush. While few were expecting a solid gold masterpiece from the latest entry in the Mario Golf franchise, there was no reason to doubt it wouldn't deliver the goods and give players a reliable experience with their money. Weirdly then, Mario Golf Super Rush is a staggeringly lazy effort that charges full retail price for a shockingly shallow, content-thin title. As enjoyable as the speed and battle golf modes are, there's a depressingly cynical lack of anything, from its boring text-based story mode to a dearth of courses and playable characters. Compared to the GameCube's far more substantial and beloved Toadstool Tour, this feels like a step back in almost every way that matters, as if Nintendo rushed to plug a gap in major releases due to the impact of the pandemic. Super Rush, a fitting title in retrospect, is an easier sell to those totally new to the franchise, but even then you'd be right for feeling ripped off if you threw down £50 to play it day one. Number 5. The Dark Pictures anthology House of Ashes. Until Dawn's anthology spin-off franchise, The Dark Pictures has so much potential, so it's massively frustrating that all 3 entries to date have delivered varying levels of disappointment. With their underwhelming narratives, over-reliance on genre cliches, and mediocre gameplay, The Dark Pictures titles have felt like pale imitations of what Until Dawn got so right: the fun of playing through an interactive horror movie with your friends. Though House of Ashes was a mild improvement over predecessors Man of Medan and Little Hope, it still succumbed to basically all the same issues. While developer Supermassive Games at least had the good sense to not charge a AAA price tag, there's so little appeal in replaying the 5 hours here despite branching story paths that few will consider it good value for money. Just wait for a sale, or given that Man of Medan ended up on Xbox Game Pass anyway, maybe wait and see if Little Hope and House of Ashes get there too. Number 4. Call of Duty Vanguard. The latest entry into the Call of Duty franchise is hardly a bad game, but it's certainly one of the most forgettable entries into the iconic series to date. Vanguard's single player returns to the well overdone World War II setting once again, and while intermittently it's fun as a snappy roller coaster ride of mayhem, this just lacks the variety to distinguish itself from prior campaigns. The multiplayer side of things fares far better, with a strong sense of customization and the winning addition of destructible scenery, even if it doesn't do nearly enough with the existing formula to justify an early purchase. What really killed the package for a lot of players was Vanguard's treatment of the beloved Zombies mode, which launched without a main quest and served up the most content-light Zombies offering in years. All this considered, it's not terribly surprising that Vanguard had the franchise's worst UK launch in 14 years. As abused as gamers are consumer-wise, few can claim that a multiplayer suite alone is worth £60 or above. Number 3. Deathloop. Deathloop is by far the most critically acclaimed video game on this list, albeit one that's received a far more lukewarm response from players in general. The idea of having to assassinate 8 people in one fell swoop in order to escape a time loop is fantastic, but Arcane gave players shockingly little room for experimentation, as the through line is actually super linear and straightforward. It doesn't help that you'll soon become hilariously overpowered whether you want to or not, meaning the game is bafflingly lacking in challenge, especially without any difficulty options available. As neat as it is on paper, Deathloop's deflating execution makes it a hard sell, especially in a market clogged with time loop games this year. When it comes to feeling rewarded and empowered, you're far better off playing The Forgotten City or Overboard. Number 2, Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy, the Definitive Edition. Despite many AAA disappointments releasing this year, not one had quite the cyberpunkian response as the remastered trilogy of GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. Even with the suspiciously slight pre-release marketing, fans just assumed Rockstar didn't need to overhype remasters of 3 games everybody already knows and loves. Instead, this lack of communication was hiding the fact they were about to push an unfinished dud out the door, with the supposed Definitive Edition tag being anything but. Though the trilogy of games certainly isn't unplayable and there are a few welcome quality of life additions, the litany of bugs, horrendous visual issues, and inconsistent art style just rubbed players up the wrong way. Ultimately, what should have been a glossy, nostalgic update of 3 of the most beloved video games of all time is instead a sad and depressingly cynical attempt to exploit a fanbase Rockstar knows will cough up the cash. As we'd later find out when it was made more clear, regular Port Factory Grove Street games were actually at the helm, with Rockstar pretending they had no idea what was being put out. In addition to all this though, players were initially denied refunds, responding alongside others by review bombing the game on Metacritic, causing it to bottom out at 0.4 out of 10. It's one of the lowest in the site's history and by far the worst score anything Rockstar related has ever gotten. While you can't really blame players for having faith in Rockstar, it's why you should always wait for coverage, especially if you're buying a game digitally and won't be able to resell it. And number 1, Aliens Fireteam Elite. The Alien franchise's video game output has been totally all over the map. For every brilliant atmospheric experience like Alien Isolation, there's a trash fire slog like Alien's Colonial Marines. Splitting the difference then, but offering up an exercise in mediocre game design, Fireteam Elite gets a certain amount of credit for capturing the look and feel of Aliens to some degree. Outside that though, it's a totally generic squad-based shooter that never aspires to be anything other than basic as hell. Play for 20 minutes and you've seen everything it can offer for 20 hours, all round coming across as a competent enough title that desperately lacks imagination. Take away the aesthetics and you have a hollow, easily forgettable shooter with a cover system that doesn't even matter. Maybe there's a future where this ends up on Game Pass or Sony Spartacus program, at least reigniting the player base. However, whether developers Cold Iron Studios give those people something to do is a whole other story. And those are our picks for various 2021 video games everybody regretted buying. Let me know your own favorites down in the comments below, and please subscribe to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, and I'll catch you soon.